You know, the skilled trades and specifically the energy industry has a workforce problem. And the answer might surprise you. It's not that people don't want these jobs, it's that most people don't even know the jobs exist. Concetta Defa knows this firsthand. She's worked in the skilled trades herself. She's built relationships with employers across the energy sector. And through Hire PowHER, a Get Into Energy initiative, she's on a mission. So today we're getting into the workforce shortage no one's talking very honestly about, the mentorship gap that's hiding in plain sight, and what it takes to build a pipeline of skilled workers who actually want to stick around.
Welcome to Skilled Nation, where hard work meets real opportunity. From welding and electrical to HVAC and the trades that keep this country running, this is where skills turn into careers. Skilled Nation is sponsored by Tulsa Welding School. It's a way of life, a badge of honor.
Conchita, so glad you're here. Welcome to Skilled Nation.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on and talk about the things that I love to talk about.
All right, well, perfect. So, it's no secret. You see the headlines all the time about the skills gap, that America needs more skilled workers. But you're saying that there's a deeper level of this conversation. Where does the mainstream conversation, what does it miss? Where does it go wrong?
Well, I think a lot of it is when people talk about, hey, we need more of this particular kind of workforce. I think traditionally people think of who that is. What does an electrician look like? What does a heavy equipment operator or a line worker, what do they look like? And traditionally people, when they first think of it, and they think men. And I think there's just a lot of room for that to be anybody. It doesn't you don't have to be a man to be in these roles, and I think we don't talk about it enough. I think there's a lot of women out there doing this work, but people don't know they're out there, and it can be scary for other women to step into those roles if they don't know that women are already out there doing it.
So you talk to employers. What do employers say about this? And what are they telling you, because you're kind of doing the inside baseball thing that the rest of us aren't hearing on the outside?
Right. I think most of the employers that I've talked with really in depth about these kind of things, they just want somebody that can do the work.
Yeah.
Past that description, it doesn't really concern them. They just want somebody that's going to show up to work and do the job they've been hired to do. They're not looking for anything really beyond that, just that dedication to the craft that they're in and their willingness to come and put in the day's work that they need, that's been asked of them. So learn the skills and then perform out on the job. That's not, I mean, I think it's a pretty standard ask.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just need to show up. The door's open for us.
So you're saying a couple of things here, right? You're talking about seeing yourself because before you take any action, you have to envision the action, right?
Right.
So if people aren't seeing themselves in the role, there's an issue. You're saying that the jobs are there, and the employers are saying, look, if you could do the job, I have one for you. What about enough people to train them? Because I've never had a job in my life where there hasn't been, even if I had a credential, even if I had the degree, even if I had whatever, box I had to check, there's always that onboarding. There's always that, follow this guy follow this woman for a month. That mentorship. Is that a part of the problem that's not getting talked about enough?
Well, we could talk about that in a couple different ways. Is one, the whole skilled trades are based on typically apprenticeship, right? Yeah. So you go in there knowing almost nothing about the career that you're stepping into, and you're learning from somebody on the job as well as some schooling. But there has to be those people out on the job that you can learn from. And we have a shortage of journey level workers. I mean, they're leaving the industry through retirement and really shifting in what they do. So they might be into higher levels of leadership, they might be retiring, all sorts of things that are happening there. And we still need to maintain enough of the skilled workforce out in the field to train the next generation of skilled workforce. We kind of got this bottleneck, right? So we have these employers, we need help, we want to hire everybody that we can get, but they're limited by how many people they have, and it's just the nature of the beast. It takes a while to learn how to safely do a lot of the jobs that we do, especially in the energy industry.
And some of that you're only going to learn in the field, hands-on, watching somebody, because some of that's environmental. It could be different in different parts of the country, right? It's really specific to a job site, an area, and a trade.
Right, right. And there's no substitute for putting your hands on the thing,
Yeah.
and actually doing it. There's just no real substitute for it, especially for the folks that, have the aptitude for trades work. Traditionally, they are the doers, not the, I can't read the instructions about it or read about it
Yeah.
and know how to do it. I need to do it to do it. And that's typically the people that do really well in the industry anyway.
Right, tactile
yeah,
learners.
yeah,
right.
the tactile learners, and the people that can't sit still or sit in a chair all the time. And look at me here. I'm doing this podcast, and it actually took me 4 different goes at doing a podcast before I could even sit down to do a podcast. Because I'm an electrician by trade. It's you're not used to it, and so it's the only way to learn. If you learn behind a desk, it's really hard to translate that into the actual practicality of the action, right? To have the tool in your hand, feel the weight of the tool, have the material, feel what it's like if a bolt is cross-threaded and you need to back it out, So just different things that you can't get any other way.
We're talking to Concetta Defa. Hire PowHER is the name of your podcast. We're going to unpack that a little later. But first I want to hear how your journey in the trades kind of has shaped, the way you see this entire conversation. Talk about that journey a little bit. What trades were you in, and what was your path?
Yeah, so I really became an electrician by literal accident. I was working at a grocery store, trying to figure out how to make money. Unfortunately, my dad had passed away of cancer, and it was just me and my mom at home. And I was like, what am I going to do to help, pay the bills or whatever? And, my college dreams kind of went down the tubes, because if I didn't get a scholarship, there was just no way we were going. And I'm working at this grocery store. They're doing a remodel. Some wires were hanging out of the wall, and I got tagged with 277 volts in my shoulder.
Oof.
And yeah, I was like, whew. And I was mad, I was angry. I was going to find the electricians, give them a piece of my mind. And, luckily, how I remember it anyway, maybe not exactly how it went down, but how I remember it is he kind of put his hand on my forehead, let me swing till I got tired, and then he's like, he must have saw some spunk in me, right?
Yeah.
And he's like,
you're trying to kick his ass,
yeah. There was no way that was gonna. He was a big guy, but I'm thankful because he sat me down and he said, "Hey, why don't you go down and talk to?" Introduced me to a woman that was the assistant business manager of the local union, and she sat on the chair of the electrical workers apprenticeship committee at the time, and sent me down to talk to her. And that was kind of my first inkling of other women out there, reaching down and saying, hey, come on, this is where it's at, right? And so at that point, I didn't know that wasn't normal for women. I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, and I didn't know that it was not normal for women to be out in these career fields. I was the second person I met was a woman, so I had no idea. So fast forward, she tells me what it's all about. I apply for the program. I get in the apprenticeship. I do my apprenticeship. I become a journey worker, work all over the place, do all sorts of things. And along the way, kind of passed on what I had been taught to mentor the next generation coming in. And that's both men and women, because when you get out there, you're mentoring everybody. As a journey worker, you train the people out in the field, but also, making it a focus to let more women know, because if I didn't know about it, and it was good for me. And then as I found out that I'm not the only one that didn't know. And so now I've just been really vocal about, 1, we're out there. 2, we should be out there. We do good things. We make good livings, which just helps us be able to make good choices in life. And in general, that's all we can ask, is have the opportunity to go out there and earn a good living. And so we're able to make good choices.
We're talking to Concetta Defa. She is with Hire PowHER, another podcaster talking to a podcaster. That never happens, by the way.
It's weird.
It's weird that this is...
Look, I came with my own stuff.
By the way, I'm going to try your trick. Next time I want to change careers, I'm going to fight somebody. That's going to be, that's a way to stand out. Nobody does that.
Yeah, you got to pick your battle. You got to pick your battles for sure.
For like old blacksmiths and, medieval, it sounds very old-timey when you talk about apprentice, journeyman, master, right? Do those levels all still exist, and are they codified in any way by a union, or how does that work?
So interestingly enough, I teach this stuff.
Hey, came to the right person.
And the Fitzgerald Act actually is what defines apprenticeship today with the Department of Labor, where it talks about you're going to learn this skill. I mean, you don't go live with the journey worker now, right? You just go, you work for an employer. You don't. But the Fitzgerald Act tells us today that, you've got to train an apprentice and teach them the skill, and you've got to pay them a wage to do that. And that's just kind of how, and how we have apprenticeship here today. Within the unions, you pretty much just have your journey worker and your apprentices, and sometimes they have pre-apprentices as well, meaning they're just kind of testing out the trade or the craft, trying to decide if it's the right one for them before they make a commitment into an apprenticeship. Because apprenticeship is a commitment. Most apprenticeships are 3 to 5 years in this industry, and it is a commitment. They're investing a lot into you, while they train you, and they expect a lot out of you. So I call it kind of the marriage. Once you accept an apprenticeship, it's like when you're a pre-apprentice or just kind of trying things out. That's like dating, I say. But then once you accept an apprenticeship, you've now decided to marry it, right? So you want to see it through to the end. You want to make that marriage work. And so that's kind of how I describe it to folks, like try some things out, but once you commit to an apprenticeship, stick it out. It'll be worth it. I see too many people that right towards the end, they stumble at that finish line, and it's worth it to finish it up.
So let's talk about too. When you're an apprentice, let's just be honest about it. Are you doing all the grunt work, the support work? Like when I was the first guy on a construction crew, I was the guy that had to do the 155-pound jack all day, right? It was weighed more than I did. I was the guy that had to mix the mud by hand in small batches. It was like all the stuff the guys who were more tenured didn't want to do. I have the kid do it. Is there a certain amount of that? I don't want to call it hazing, but dues paying in the apprentice phase. Yeah,
it's dues paying, but I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit more of it's still part of the trade, right? Those are the things that you learn that if you don't, and I don't think people realize it, if you don't learn that part, how are you going to teach somebody every stage of the career? So it is dues paying. If I've been an electrician for 30 years, and if I'm out on a job site and I have an apprentice, that apprentice I'm going to hand the shovel to. But at the same time, that's what got me into the apprenticeship is knowing how to run a shovel. I grew up on a farm. That was the skill that got me started, was running a shovel. So, and I think, like I know some heavy equipment operators, and they'll tell you that being out in the dirt helps you learn the soil, and from an angle in a way that you wouldn't if you never were out in the dirt. And so it's important for you to learn every aspect. So yeah, you're going to go out there and you're going to do all the hard stuff. You're going to be, carrying everything. You're going to be running back and forth with material. You're going to be the one digging the holes. You're going to be almost whatever's asked of you, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be you. But most of the really good journeymen, it's not that they wouldn't do it. They won't ask you to do something that they wouldn't do if they had to, but if they don't have to.
Well, you're right there. You're right there.
Yeah. So,
I don't blame them one bit. I wouldn't blame you one bit. And you've been doing this, 30 plus years?
30 years. Don't make me too much older.
30, okay, 30 years.
Let's just cap it off at 30.
Let's say 30. All right, clean 30. At some point, though, you woke up and said, you know what, I got to do something about this disconnect. And so describe the disconnect and that moment where you said, I'm going to step into this void that became Hire PowHER. And by the way, for the people who are only listening to this, I should say that PowHER is spelled POWHER.
Right.
So there's clearly kind of a female empowerment or awareness aspect to this. So when did you really decide? Was it an aha moment? Was it a gestation over time where you kind of said, I'm circling this idea and I need to jump? When did you do this?
So I've always done it in my entire career, always done it to a certain level, just maybe not structured or just in passerby, just kind of just let people know, like doing little career days at schools and
Okay.
things. So I've done that almost my entire career because I was taught to do that from the very beginning by my mentors. But some realizations came in as we started seeing the industry grow back in probably the like 2015-ish time. We really started to see industries grow and more demand there. And as I saw more and more electricians, which is where I was at the time, more and more electricians come into the fold, I started noticing that the growth didn't happen the same way for the women. Like I knew there were just the same amount of women over like a 15-year span, but the men had doubled in that same span.
Okay.
So the women weren't growing at the same rate. And I tried to, I went through and I talked to a lot of different folks. I talked to folks with Apprenticeship. I talked to folks with the union. I looked out there. What I found out is there was no intentionality. They're like, hey, we need electricians. Hey, we need operators, like out there, just like today. We need everybody. But the career field has traditionally been, like I said, if you picture what a construction worker looks like, it doesn't necessarily look like a women for most people. And so they weren't just by saying, hey, we need more electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters. The men were answering the call, but the women were not. And so that kind of spoke volumes to me because I knew a lot of women that would be really good in these career fields. And then as I got talking to them, I like to liken it with sports. Women's sports was the same way. Like the same things were keeping women from playing sports that were keeping them out of the construction industry. And sometimes it was just not knowing the right things. Like you think about a construction site and what's on TV is the only thing you know, you might go, I don't want to do that, So I think there's a little bit of that. I think the other thing that drove me to do it is there was a lot of misunderstanding about what construction workers were, right? It used to be, if you can't make it anywhere else, here's construction. And I used to joke around and say, we're third-class citizens, right? You walk into a department store and the workers there will look at you a little funny if you come in all dirty, and their perception of what a construction worker is somebody that can't make it anywhere else, right? And that's absolutely not the case. The construction workforce, the skilled trades, they're exactly that. They're skilled, highly skilled, and it takes a long time to get there. And I have seen people in the skilled trades and all the different, professions within it that gosh, they do some incredible things. They're some of the most brilliant people I know. And so I think thinking about like, I don't want to step in a career field and then just be a construction worker. But man, there is so much more to that. So I think the work to say, hey, we construction workers are what drive the economy. Construction workers are the problem solvers in most every society, right? And so I think changing that perception of what a construction worker is, both in who is a construction worker and exactly what a construction worker is and does. What does that look like and who is that? And I think changing that to what it really is kind of helps.
So you're making that change.
Yeah. Just showing it. We got to show it, right? We got to show who everybody is. That's why in our podcast and in yours as well, you're bringing people from these skilled trades and let's have the conversation. Let's get you to know who they are and what's going on out there in that world, because we're kind of a big deal. I'm just saying, we're kind of a big deal.
100% agree.